Assalamualaikum, we are Group 4 and for now, we will be presenting on the valuation of variations under the PWD 203A and PAM 2018 contracts. We have been assigned to explain the methods of valuation with a particular focus on the contract rate method. Before discussing the valuation methods, let me briefly introduce the concept of variation under both the PWD 203A and PAM 2018 contracts. A variation refers to any change made to the original scope of work after the contract has been awarded. These changes may include additions, omissions, substitutions, or alterations to the work. Starting with the PWD 203A, a variation is any alteration, addition, omission, substitution, or any change instructed by the Superintending Officer or SO. Variations are usually made to meet project requirements, respond to site conditions, or comply with the client's instructions while still achieving the project's objectives. The valuation is based on a bill of quantities, BQ, the schedule of rates, or a fair valuation where necessary. Once approved by the SO, the value of the variation is included in the interim payments and the final accounts. On the other hand, under PAM 2018, a variation is any change to the original contract works instructed by the architect. These changes may involve the design, scope, quality, or quantity of the work during construction. The valuation is generally based on the bills of quantities and the standard method of measurement (SMM). After the architect values and certifies the variation, it is included in the interim certificates and the final account. If we take a look at the both contract, although both contracts allow changes to the original works, the main differences are the person who issues the instruction and the basis used to value the variation. If we take a look at this slide, there are four main methods of valuation and they are usually applied in order of priority depending on the circumstances. The first method is contract rates. This is the preferred method because the work in the variation is similar to the original contract work. Therefore, the existing rates in the bills of quantities can be applied directly without any changes. The second method is adjusted contract rates. This method is used when the variation is similar to the original work, but the conditions have changed, such as the quantity, location, or a method of construction. In this case, the original contract rates are adjusted to reflect those differences. The third method is agreed rates. If the work is not covered by the contract rates, the contractor and the contract administrator, such as the architect under PAM or the superintending officer SO under PWD, negotiate and agree on a suitable rate before the work is valued. Then the last method is day work price. This method is used when the variation cannot be measured accurately in advance, such as emergency work or unforeseen conditions. The contractor is paid based on the actual labor, materials, plant, and equipment used, together with the agreed overheads and profit. In summary, variation orders are valued using the most appropriate method, starting with the contract rates whenever possible and only using agreed rates or day work prices when the previous methods cannot be applied.
Assalamualaikum. Today I will explain about contract rate, which is one of the methods used to value a variation order in construction projects. First, let me explain what a contract rate is. A contract rate is the unit price or rate that has already been agreed between the employer and the contractor during the tender stage. This rate is recorded in the bill of quantities or BQ before the contract is signed. Since both parties have already accepted the price, the contract rate becomes legally binding and cannot simply by change. Under PAM 2018 and PWD 203A revision 1/2010, the contract rate is the first method used to value a variation order. This is because it is the simplest and most reliable method. However, the contract rate can only be used when the variation work is of similar character and carried out under similar conditions as the original work. For example, if the same material, workmanship, and construction method are used, then the existing contract rate can still be applied. It is also suitable for omitted work that is already listed in the bill of quantities. In certain situations, a percentage adjustment may be made if there are minor differences, but generally the agreed contract rate remains the basis for valuations. Now let's look at an example. To use the contract rate, several conditions must be fulfilled. First, the material, specification, and quality must be the same as the original work. Second, the construction method and workmanship must also remain the same. Third, there should not be any significant change in the site conditions that could affect the cost. For example, the original contract in the bills of quantity state that the rate for supplying and installing floor tiles is Rm90 per square meter. Later, the superintending official issued a variation order instructing the contractor to install an additional 50 square meter of the same floor tiles. Since the work is exactly the same as the original contract, we use the existing contract rate without preparing a new rate. The calculation is straightforward, which is 50 square meter multiplied with Rm90 per square meter. The total got Rm 4,500. Therefore, the value of the variation order is Rm 4,500. Lastly, I will explain the valuation procedure using the contract rate. There are 6 steps. The first step is the superintending official can issue a variation order to instruct the additional or omitted work. Second step is identify and clearly describe the variation work to everyone understand what changes are required. Third step is check whether the work is similar in character and carried out under similar conditions as the original contract work. Step 4 is refer to the bills of quantity to find the existing contract rate for that item. Step 5 is apply the agreed contract rate to the variation work. The last step is calculate the total value by multiplying the quantity of work with the contract rate. This process makes sure that the valuation is fair, accurate, and based on the rate already agreed in the contract. Thank you. That's all for me, and I will pass to the next presenter.
Hi everyone, my name is Nakamia Nasara. So I will explain how the calculation will be made under the contract rate. So I chose the past year question in July 2024. So let's look at the question first. So the Syarikat Pembinaan Jaya Maju Sidang Berhad was awarded a contract by the government for renovation work for floor finishes in government's administration buildings at Johor Bahru. One of the items in bill of quantity is as follows. Item A, 150 mm times width 150 mm times width 7 mm thick approved anti-slip ceramic tiles, bedded, jointed and pointed cements and sand, 1:3, mortar to floor level not exceeding 50 degrees from horizontal on skirted bed. So the unit in meter square, the quantity is 120, the rate is 70 ringgit, and the amount of the total of quantity and rates is 8,400 ringgit. So the superintending officer SO for the project has identified that there will be change in the quantity for the item in 200 meters square and has instructed the contractor to make the change accordingly. So, according to the question given, there have a change in quantity of the item only, which is in 200 meters square, but the item and also the others are not being changed, and the variation just only on quantity. So, on the next slide, let's look at how the calculation will be made. So for this calculation, I made a two column, which is in the left one is description and the right one is the total. For in the description, we put the description on the item as the previous question, and for the right one, the total, we split it into the additional and the omission. So for under column additional, we put the amount that had the variation, which is the 200 meters square, times with the rate, and we got 14,000 ringgit. And for the omission, we put it at the actual amount, which is the original quantity is 120 meters square, times with the rate 70 ringgit, and we got the 8,400. So in order we get to the net, which is the addition or omission that we got, the amount of addition minus with the omission, and then we got the positive one, which is the 560 ringgit. And with two of that, we got the variation for this item is addition.
Here is the comparisons. PWD uses the Superintending Officer SO, while PAM uses Architect to instruct variations. Next, both clauses empower the contract administrator to order additions, omissions, substitutions, or changes to the work. Next, PWD provides a separate clauses specifically for valuations, while PAM combines variations and valuations under Clause 11. Next, PWD deals with PC and provisional sum separately, whereas PAM groups them together with variations. In both contracts, the value of approved variations is included in interim payment certificates before final account settlement. And the major difference, PAM requires formal written AI, and oral instructions are not recognized until properly confirmed under Clause 2.2.
Okay, so next I will explain the advantages and disadvantages of using contract rates in valuing variation order. So first, let's look at the advantages. The first advantage is that using contract rate will speed up the valuation process. Since the rate have already been agreed upon during the tender stage, the quantity surveyor does not need to prepare a completely new rate. This allows the valuation of the variation work to be complete more efficiently. Second, contract rates are based on the agreed rate in the bill of quantities. This means both the employer and the contractor are already familiar with the rates, making the valuation process more straightforward. Another advantage is that to ensure the consistency, fairness, and transparency, because the same contract rate are applied, the pricing method is clear and less likely to favor either party. Lastly, using a contract rate helps to reduce dispute. Since the rate have already been accepted by both parties in the contract, there is a less disagreement regarding to the value of the variation work. Now, let's move to the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that contract rate can only be used for a work that is similar in a nature to the original contract work. If the variation involves completely different work, the original contract rate may no longer be appropriate. Secondly, the contract rate may need to be adjusted if the working conditions are different. For example, change in the construction method, Site access, location, or working environment may affect the actual cost of carrying out the work. Another disadvantage is that contract rate is not suitable for entirely for a new type of a work that are not included in the original contract. In such case, a new rate of or fair rate needs to be established. Lastly, significant changes in the quantity of work may also require the contract rate to be revised, as the original rate may no longer reflect the actual cost of construction.
Here's are the importance of contract rates in QS practice. The first one, fair valuations of variations. Contract rates provide a fair and consistent basis for valuing additional or omitted work without arbitrary pricing. Next, cost control. Enable quantity surveyor to monitor project costs and prevent unnecessary cost overruns resulting from variations. Next is faster payment process. Agreed contract rates allow variations to be valued quickly, facilitating interim payments and maintaining the contractor's cash flow. And next is reduce dispute. Using pre-agreed contract rates minimize disagreement between the employer and contractor regarding the value of variations work. And last but not least is support final account preparations, where contract rates serve as the basis for preparing and agreeing on the final account at the project completions.
So, in the conclusion, contract rates are the preferred method for valuing variation order when the work is similar to the original contract and carried out under similar condition. This method provides a fair, efficient, transparent way for valuing variation because it uses the rate that were already agreed during the tender stage. However, if the variation work is significantly different or carried out under different site conditions, other valuation methods such as adjusted rate, fair rate, or day work should be used to ensure the fair assessment.